Hello, my name is Crystal Petrie, and thank you so much for joining me on another episode of my podcast, the Crystal Petrie Podcast. On today's episode, we are learning all about holistic health, something that is going around. I feel like everyone is being more conscious of the medicines that they're taking or not taking. And we're also going to learn about root cause medicine. And today, here to educate me and you about these topics, we have Dr. Jamie Guyden. So, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jamie.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm happy to be here. Excited to chat.
Excellent, excellent. So, of course, my first question for you, Dr. Jamie, is can you or would you define holistic health? What is that?
Yes, thank you for that question because that's actually where the confusion begins. So many people define it in a lot of different ways. And so, to try to stay as pure to the question as possible, the idea of holism or holistic health is the recognition and awareness that we are one being within and without. In other words, we are not the sum of our parts, right? We are not a heart and then a lung and then a foot and then a nose. All of us, inside and out, works together. So not only do the organs work together, but you then have to recognize that the physical body works with invisible parts of us, like mind, spirit. Some people call that energy, right? So the idea or the philosophy around holism is that you are one, and you are one within yourself, and you are one with everything around you.
Now, you stated something that most people, including myself, have not heard. I've always heard that we are the sum of our parts,
Mhm.
but you are saying with holistic health, that is not the case.
Right. So the sum of our parts idea comes from it started around the 1800s. It's known as reductionism, right? It's the idea that everything in nature, including our bodies, can be understood by breaking it down, taking it apart, and then putting it back together again. That's reductionist science. When that came on the scene, all of our medicine became started to be taught that way. So all of our medical school and all of our training to this day comes with this idea that we are reduced to the sum of our parts. And now we're starting to understand, because reductionist medicine, conventional medicine, allopathy, everything we currently do doesn't seem to be working as well as it used to. We're starting to tap back into some ancient wisdom. And prior to the 1800s, we knew, the kinds of doctors that we had knew fully that we were whole beings and that we were one with nature and that we were one with, say, spirit or God or all that is, right? And that our healing could be understood through that lens, right? So that is the idea that we want to bring back to the mainstream so that people can actually start healing.
Why do you think, if you stated, Dr. Jamie, in the 1800s when with the doctors we had, they understood holistic health in a sense, but
Mhm.
it seems like at some point in time there was a pivot to where we now see the conventional medicine. Do you know why that pivot happened?
Yes, and it's not a popular answer. But at the end of the day, everything that we interact with now, whether it's medicine or finance or education, it's about profit. It's about profit, and it's about power structures, right? So this is what we're seeing in the medical paradigm. We call it the medical industrial complex for a reason, because these things are money makers, right? So the way that our medical system stands, it only works if you and I are sick, right? It no longer works if you and I are actually well, right? And I know that might be a trigger for some people, but that's okay. I mean, we are at a time and space where we all need to really sit and think about the things we interact with, the ways that we create in the world. And this is one of them. What we do with our bodies and how we interact with our bodies is a major understanding that we have to step into. So yes, unfortunately, when it became popular to monetize our health and our well-being, to monetize vitamins and minerals, to monetize medications, our structure started to change.
That is truly unfortunate.
Yeah.
Truly unfortunate. Yes. What are some key principles of holistic health?
So, that's a loaded question because again, it depends on how you define it. Now, for me, the key principle lies in understanding why the whole system is sick in the first place. Okay. And that actually directly ties into something you said in the beginning, which is root cause medicine. So there are currently two main paradigms of medicine right now. We've got the conventional allopathic model that looks at, like we talked about, the sum of your parts, but also looks at symptoms, gives those symptoms a disease name, and then treats those symptoms with pharmaceuticals. Okay. So it is a mask the symptom model. It's not really healing. It's just, let's get rid of the symptoms and we don't have to worry about anything else. When you start looking at yourself holistically and you start looking at yourself at the whole, as the whole, you start asking, well, why are these symptoms happening in the first place? Yeah, you can give me a name of a disease, but that doesn't tell me why. Why is my blood sugar elevated? Uh, why is my skin irritated? Why do I now have an autoimmune condition? Okay. And so when you start asking why and you peel back the layers and you look under the surface, now we're having a conversation about root cause. So that's the main principle, is to ask the question why. And that's where I encourage everyone to start. Just, when something happens, when we question our reality, when we ask the question why, you start to get the answers in very unexpected ways, right? And so start asking why, challenge your doctor. Why don't I feel well? Why is the medicine not working as well as it should? Or why is it just keeping things at bay? Why am I going to have this forever? And when you do that and you peel back those layers, you suddenly see that there is more to the picture than meets the eye. And so that's the main principle of holism.
It seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that when you enter into the holistic health world or community, it really wants you to advocate for yourself and for your body holistically. Because as you were speaking, Dr. Jamie, saying that we need to push back against our doctors, not in a negative or a rude way, but just trying to get to the root cause of what's going on with our bodies. It's really wanting you to advocate for yourself and advocate for your health.
1,000%, right? See, at the root of that, we have given our authority away. We have given our power away, right? And so you are your own power. So personal responsibility becomes the name of the game. And the first part of personal responsibility and taking one's power or authority back is to ask questions. We don't just need to follow instructions, we need to ask questions. And so, yes, I'm a huge advocate. All over my website, I think it says a million times about personal responsibility. Because what you find when you start to heal yourself, when you start to uncover the root cause, is that a lot of the solution is well within your control. It's not external to us. And that's another huge principle about holism. It's inside, it's within me. It's not external to me.
How does holistic health approach preventing diseases rather than just treating the symptoms, as you stated that conventional medicine does?
Yeah. So after you uncover the root and you start to look at solution, most of which are within you, you are well on a path to then preventing. Right. There aren't that many of us left that don't have something going on. Right. So prevention is in education, it's in inner wisdom, and it's in lifestyle, right? And those are all things, once you start to learn those things and you understand those things, you get closer and closer to interacting less with what we call dis-ease in the body.
What does or how does, and this is me assuming that it does, What does spirituality play in holistic health?
In my opinion, everything, everything. And I wouldn't have said that, 15 years ago. But as I healed my own body and I began healing, helping others to heal, guiding others into their own healing, I recognized the immense role that spirituality, or that of the unseen, like I said, there's a visible part to us and there's an invisible part to us. That invisible part to us plays, if I had to put a percentage on it, 95% of who we are and how our bodies will heal. And the first part of that is recognizing that it's there. Okay. Again, when we started to prophetize medicine and we started to make it about being sick and disease, we totally separated ourselves from our spirit. And I would say that most of what I have begun to do, and most in my space, is to remind people of that part of them. So I would say it's a major, major piece of who we are. And we have completely forgotten the role of that.
Dr. Jamie, let's talk a little bit about how you got into holistic health because you are a medical doctor.
Mhm.
And I've been on your website so many times. We were talking about this before we got on the podcast. And within your website, you talk about how you are able to heal yourself through holistic medicine. So,
Mhm.
can you give us some information about that as much as you feel comfortable sharing?
Absolutely, absolutely. Each of our stories is our wisdom, right? So I'm always happy to share. So I was diagnosed with systemic lupus at the age of 16 years old. I'm 47 now, so this was 30 some odd years ago. That was obviously devastating in and of itself because we're already awkward as teenagers, right? It's like we don't
Yes.
we don't need things on top of being generally awkward. But it was my journey, and I took it on. And so at that time, lupus, I mean, it wasn't as understood as we understand it now. It wasn't as mainstream. Very few people had lupus, and it was thought to be mainly a genetic condition. And the only thing that doctors were doing were medication, right? And so I was told, you have an autoimmune condition, you're going to have it for the rest of your life, you're going to be on medication for the rest of your life. I was told at various times you're going to have trouble having kids. You need to stay away from the sun. I was given a lot of advice on how to keep myself well, and I was what I coined a good little patient. I did everything my doctors told me to do. I took 15 medications at any one time. It ruled my life. It was who I was. Something happened in my early 30s. By this time, I was a practicing physician. So I was sick all through medical school and after medical school and early into my career. Something happened in my early 30s that I call my awakening, a first awakening, where I realized that there was more to me than I had been taught, more than I had been taught growing up, more than I had been taught in med school, more than I had been taught as a practicing physician. And it kind of shoved me into seeking more. And I did. I didn't even really know what I was doing or what I was looking for because I only knew allopathic medicine. And so I began to search for, I think I looked up holistic healers. I didn't look up root cause because we didn't know what that was, but I think I looked up something like holistic healing on the internet. And I found one lady in Houston, Texas, who was practicing what she coined holistic healing. And I went and I saw her. And within 2 years, I was off all medications. I had lost all the weight I'm 5'2". And at that time, I was like 185, 90 pounds. So I was obese. I'd lost all the weight. I was happier than ever. I, wasn't depressed and anxious, and I saw that there was a path to life, and this was unheard of. This was unheard of. So it clearly changed the entire trajectory of my career in that moment because there was no way for me, knowing what I now knew, that I could continue down the path of prescribing medications, diagnosing disease. And so that then spiraled into me seeking out education. And that particular doctor helped me get started on my education. And then I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm always going to be learning about the ways to heal ourselves, and then eventually opened up my own practice and started to spread the same wisdom to other folks. So it's an each one teach one. I practice what I preach kind of story that is I'm very passionate about, obviously, because it quite literally saved my life.
Your journey is amazing.
Thank you.
In just a few minutes that you condensed it down, I'm in awe. I cannot believe that. So, whenever you went to the doctor that was located in Houston, Texas, that was practicing holistic health, why did you go to her? Was it you were just tired of taking all the medications? You were tired of feeling the way you were feeling?
Yes, I was fed up. I was looking when I had that awakening. I looked in the mirror one morning and I had no idea who I was. I just did not know. I was miserable. I was unhappy. That was the biggest piece. It was, yes, the physical symptoms and discomfort was there, but it was the emotional, mental piece that really pushed me. I, in that unhappiness, you're mean. I was a mean person. I was a mean doctor. I wasn't nice. No one wanted to be around me. I didn't want to be around me. And so I think it was this mental, emotional, spiritual nudge that said, figure something out, figure something out. And so, yes, I liked what I read on her website. She was classically trained as well, so I could speak with that in that language with her. But she also was able to baby step me into speaking this new language, and so I believe it was part of the journey I was meant to be on.
Now, during your story, you said you firmly believe in each one, teach one. Are you currently accepting clients?
I am. I have a private membership, so I call the people that come my way members instead of clients or patients, just because those words have charges to them that I think we're all familiar with. But yes, I am currently taking people. It's an educational model more than anything. I do believe that the reason I was able to change myself is because I was educated on how to change myself. So um, check out the website, see if it's a good fit for you. I throw free monthly classes so people can educate themselves. And I also offer one-on-one care as well as group care.
What is your website?
The website is modeled after the name. The name of the business is The Healing Within, and the website is www.thehealingiswithin.com.
Okay. And who do you think would make an ideal client? Like my listeners that are listening now, how do they know that they should primarily come to you but pursue holistic health?
So I generally tell people, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you are wrapped up in the model, and you've got a list of medications and supplements a mile long, and you feel like you're not getting the answers that you want, and or there's something more, like this nudge I talked about, this is a real nudge, there's something more, then you're probably a good fit. I do go through on the website on who's a good fit and who's not a good fit. So check out the frequently asked questions, and you can find out a little bit more detail about what makes a great healing within client. But in general, we're at a moment where there's kind of no going back. Like you said in the beginning, the word holism is showing up. Holistic health is showing up. People are going to their doctor and they're like, I don't want another prescription. That's not solving my problem, right? People are while we're living longer, people's quality of life is suffering. And so I think I am the doctor for the fed up patient, for the fed up person, the person who is just done, and wants somebody who's saying something completely different than what they keep hearing over and over again.
One of the things you said, Dr. Jamie, about your journey from traditional, conventional medicine to holistic health was you became a happier person. How
Mhm.
does holistic health help with emotional well being?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So again, when you start to step into recognizing that there is more to you than you've been taught, right? You're more than just a physical body. You layer on top of that the understanding that the mind and body are inextricable, I never can say that word, linked. They're very much linked. They're two sides of the same coin, one you see and one you don't see. In that recognition alone, in that awareness alone, healing can ensue. But on top of that, you start making different lifestyle changes. You make different choices, right? For example, the biggest issue I see with our emotional, like our collective emotional and mental well-being right now are the screens. Now, they're great for us to be able to communicate right now, but think about how many of us doom scroll for hours on end. You're just sitting there. You're just comparing yourself. You're just that by the time you're done, it's been 2 hours. You could have read a book and cooked a meal. You don't understand why you feel awful. You've just compared yourself to 20 other influencers or this, that, and the other thing. It's just one brief example, but nonetheless an example. Well, you have to change your lifestyle. You have to change what you're doing with your time. You have to become aware of how you're spending your time and where you're putting your emotional energy, right? Where you're putting your thoughts and your ideas. And that's a big part of understanding holistic well-being.
Let's talk a little bit more about lifestyle factors. How does sleep, stress, exercise help being integrated into holistic health?
It's everything, right? So again, percentages, because people think in pie charts. So if I were to break down the roles that people have with regard to how to heal holistically, I would say 90% of that healing comes through your lifestyle, through your decisions about food, through your decisions about where you put your thoughts, like I said, minding your thoughts, through your decisions about sleep, alcohol, with how you handle and deal with stress. Stress is going to be a part of our lives. We're going to have challenges until we leave this earth. It's just what it is. How we respond to it, that's a whole nother story, right? Um, how much time we spend in the sun, what we do in our relationships and our partnerships, that's 90% of the healing. The other 10% is herbs, supplements, detoxification. It's these are the parts that I'm guiding people on, this tiny 10%. But what they will see is that most of it has to come from them, right? And that ties back to that personal responsibility. Because frankly, some people aren't ready to change their lives. They're not ready to take those steps. They don't want to put the fast food down, right? They're not ready to give up the 3 glasses of wine in the evening. They want to sit on the screen after 9 p.m., these kinds of things, right? But that's what it is, that's what it is. It's our journey to learning how to live holistically.
It seems to me that holistic health, you're really putting in work into yourself, but the benefits are astronomical, but you have to do the work, which, like you said, most people probably don't want to do the work.
Right. I mean, in a paradigm where we have given all that authority over, and it's like, I'm here, I'm sick, give me my pills, and let me go on about my way so that I can continue to work 50 hours a week, stare at screens, drink my drinks, and eat my eats, right? It's a hard mindset shift. And so that's really the first step in any healing journey, holistic or not, is to shift the mindset. Like I told you, my story was like, I was like, I don't like this. I don't want this. That was the mindset. That was the mind. That was the invisible part of my physical saying, something's got to give right now. And so that's the first part. But I find that most people who find me or other holistic healers, they've done that step. They found that mindset shift has happened. They might not know exactly what to do, but they're done. They're like, okay, something has to change. I'm willing to do what it takes at this point. All I'm doing is getting sicker, and I want to feel better.
Would you say for someone that is interested in doing holistic health, the first step would be the mind shift? Because, of course, we're not advocating that, on Monday you completely change your entire life. You
Yeah.
really have to baby step your way into this. So, what would you say needs to be the first thing that someone would do?
You have to want it. You have to want it. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to decide you want it. And in that click, in that choice, it becomes easier. Because once you've made the choice, the robotic steps of, okay, well, now I'm going to make sure I go to bed at 9 p.m. I'm going to turn off all blue light screens. I'm going to drink this much water per day. I'm going to take ownership of the kinds of meals I eat. That becomes easy. But that first step, the first step to any journey is always the hardest step, right? Think about that. You
It's
know,
true.
anything we do, deciding to go to secondary school or taking the big job or moving with the family, that first step is the hardest step. And that's the choice point. That's what we call a choice point. You're making the choice to do something differently. So that's step one.
Earlier in the podcast, you spoke a little bit about root cause medicine. Can you elaborate more on exactly what is root cause medicine?
Yeah, so root cause medicine, it really is embedded in the name. It's like what's at the root that is causing this set of symptoms that I'm having. Okay. After doing this for over 10 years, I believe there's only one root cause, and I teach this in my classes. And I think there's that one root cause is toxicity. I think between physical toxicity and everything embedded in that, emotional toxicity, everything embedded in that, mental toxicity, and spiritual toxicity. If you handle those four prongs, there's only wellness on the other side. Now, having said that, and to kind of step it down a little bit, other things that the people who do this work with me believe are root causes are things like mitochondrial dysfunction, right? So our mitochondria are these little tiny cells in the nucleus that produce energy, or something called ATP. And we have found that a lot of that mitochondria is dysfunctional. See, and I say it's toxic, right? So if you clear up the toxics from the mitochondria, suddenly you have energy. So things like mitochondrial dysfunction, blood sugar dysfunction, what's another big root? Metabolic dysfunction, issues with our thyroids and our hormonal systems, right? These are the things that we look at. But I like to take it a step further and say, well, why aren't thyroids working and hormones working and blood sugars working? Because the fact is, this blueprint is perfect. When it came here, it was perfect. It already had everything it needed. It has the wisdom well within it to do what it needs to do. So you have to keep asking why, why is it not working? And once you uncover and remove the things in the way of this already perfect blueprint, wellness is at your feet.
You know what, Dr. Jamie? That's something I've never, number one, I've never heard before. And number two, I have never thought about before. You are right. When we come here, our bodies are perfect,
Mhm.
barring any like unforeseen things that happen during birth or maybe before birth. But for the most part, your bodies are perfect when they get here. The
Mhm.
heart is fine, the lungs, everything is working and operating in perfection.
That's right.
But it's the other stuff that we start doing that starts affecting us emotionally and mentally and physically.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. So that's definitely, as Oprah Winfrey would say, a aha moment for me.
I'm
Okay. What are some common root causes of chronic diseases that are often overlooked in conventional medication?
Well, yeah. So, like I just discussed
Mhm.
toxicity, right? So,
Okay.
food toxins, air toxins, water toxins. Like our water is very toxic. Most people are drinking the wrong type of water, and they're drinking it or not drinking it at all and replacing it with soda, right? So those are really big issues. Like I said, blood sugar issues. But again, why would blood sugar be off? I would say Hormone and metabolic issues seem to be a big issue for us now. We all seem to have issues with our testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone in ways we historically didn't. And again, I think that that traces back to levels of toxicity, and it's things that we're interacting with, things we're breathing in, things we're drinking, things we're eating, things we're consuming emotionally and mentally. Right? These are the main root causes. Another big one that most people don't hear about, especially in the mainstream, is parasites. We have tons and tons of parasites. There's not one person who comes through my doors that does not have a version of parasites. And the thing about parasites is they can live their full life cycle. This is kind of gross, but they can live their full life cycle in your body for up to 25, 30 years. So
Yeah.
they can have babies. They can, I know.
Oh,
I gave you a disclaimer. I gave you a preface.
you
They
did. Continue, Dr. Jamie.
and they can set up shop in all of your organs and all of your tissues, and it's just something we just don't recognize. I was never taught that in medical school, and it was something I had to go learn later. So it's such an easy thing to recognize and remove, but that's one of the real big ones that's so common and just very much ignored.
What are some tools or tests that you use to uncover root causes of diseases, or just like you vividly described, to determine if someone has parasites in their body?
Yeah, parasites are still hard to detect with the tools that we currently have, but from a root cause perspective, there's advanced testing we can do. So there's blood work you can do, just like you're used to with your conventional doctor. But we can expand on that. There are advanced tests we can do. There's gut studies that we can do. There's toxin studies we can do. So we call all that advanced testing. So using the blood, the urine, or the saliva, and sometimes even the hair to detect things that we are not going to get from our conventional doctors.
Hmm.
There's also another level of that. And like I said, we are visible and invisible. And so there's something called bioresonance testing or muscle testing, where you can interact with a person's nervous system, which is really their biofeedback system, and you can get information about their bodies simply by asking their bodies questions. I know that might be a lot, but just sit with that and maybe, rewind that in a moment. But your body, again, is perfect. It is divine, and it will tell you exactly what it needs, when it needs it, and how it needs it. So there's a ton we can do from this perspective to uncover what's going on in the body.
Let's talk about nutrition and diet as it pertains to holistic health. How important is proper nutrition in holistic health and root cause medicine?
Yep. So right now we're eating, genetically modified processed foods and sugar. This is our diet, right? Soda, Gatorade, fast food, enriched wheat, things that have been genetically modified, like our corn and soy. This is not what our body is meant to interact with. It's that was not the landscape. Okay. And while I don't like to get into the semantics of like, do I eat meat? Do I not eat meat? Do I do vegetarian? Do I do keto? That's not the conversation. The conversation is about nourishment. And I try to teach my clients how to intuitively know what will nourish them, because what will nourish me will not necessarily nourish you, Crystal. We each have our own blueprint, right? So it's where it gets a little nuanced in the conversation. But it's hugely important. And what I have found is, with regard to nutrition, it's less about telling people what to eat and more about telling people what to take out. It's more about like, get that out. Okay. And it's not about restriction either. It's not about restriction or food lists. It's about being smart and being intuitive about how to nourish oneself. Right. So it's extremely important, but that comes with understanding yourself in wholeness.
Dr. Jamie, I did a podcast a couple days ago, And I just learned that the corn that we eat, the yellow corn that we eat, is genetically modified.
Hmm.
I had no ideas. At my big age, I
Yeah.
did not know that the yellow corn, the sweet corn that we buy from our grocery stores are genetically modified, and that Mexico is, in fact, in the process of stopping the yellow corn from exporting or importing because it's damaging the organic corn,
Yeah.
the different colored corn that is how it's supposed to look.
Yeah. Just same with wheat and same with almost anything. There's not much you can find now that isn't genetically modified because GMO seeds are super seeds and they take over the crops of all the other seeds. So at a point, I mean, we're at a critical point where everything that we are interacting with is genetically modified. And see, this is why I said awareness is key, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? But
Right.
once you do know, then you can start making some better decisions. Yes.
Oh my
And we
goodness.
don't, contrary to popular belief, we do not want our genes modified. We are
Right.
perfect. We do not need them modified in any way, shape, or form.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was a I could not believe, and just all the years that we've just been eating that corn. But anyway, we're not gonna get into that. Do your research. What I'm gonna say, do your research. Do your research. How does someone determine, or how do you help as well determine the best diet for someone, or what they should be eating holistically that will be beneficial for them?
So in the beginning, while I'm teaching people how to, become intuitive, because again, our intuition has, been shut off in many, many ways as well. There's some specialized testing that can be done. So there are allergy testing and sensitivity testing that we can do to see what you're reacting to. I do
Mm-hmm.
this a lot with my autoimmune clients because they tend to overreact to all foods. So there's testing we can do. But in general, my biggest advice, and easy for anyone listening to this to implement today, is to stay away from genetically modified foods. Find out what they are and stay away from them. And it's not easy because, like I said, most of what we are interacting with is genetically modified. So, but if we can step into freshness and wholeness, right? Go to your farmer's market, know what your farmers are making, eat the fruits, eat the vegetables, eat the freshest things that are local and right here. You're not going to make a mistake with that. And then from there you can get more refined and say, okay, well, this time of year I need to eat a little bit more of this, and this time of year I need to eat a little bit more of that, right? And that just comes with time. But I think if we can stay away from processed and genetic modification, you're going to be doing a whole host of good for yourself.
What are your thoughts on elimination diets for identifying like food intolerances and allergies?
They can be useful. They can be useful. In fact, that's how I started my own personal journey. Is I just took it all out and I ate rice and beef at the time was the least reactive. And then I just slowly started bringing one food back in at a time. I don't recommend them as much anymore because we all are overly stressed as it is. And sometimes when you start taking all that food, and now there are some people who are really sick, and taking all that food out is going to be the best approach.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to work with mind, body, and spirit at the same time, right? And in doing that, it for me, it's the path of least resistance. So I ask the soul in front of me, what is going to be the easiest way to get you to make changes? Some people are going to say, I want it all out. And that's going to be useful. And they stay off of it, everything for 3 months. They introduce one food back at a time, see what reacts, what doesn't react. And others are going to be like, listen, doc, you can't take away my chocolate cake. Okay, let's not take away your chocolate cake. Can we give up the soda? Can we give up we will negotiate on the things. But elimination diets are hugely helpful, especially if people are confused and they really don't know what they're reacting to.
Okay. How do you balance, because we want this to be balanced as much as possible. So how do you balance the need for whole, unprocessed, not genetically modified foods to the lifestyle, the fast-paced lifestyle that the majority of people live these
Yeah.
days. You're constantly on the go. You're working, kids, spouse, whatever. Like you're just constantly going.
Yeah. I get it. But like I said at the start, you got to make that choice. You got to make that choice.
Mhm.
We can't have both, right? And so I like to say in my classes, you can't have a new shortcut to circumvent the old shortcut. And that's currently what we're doing right now. It's like, well, what can I keto my way out of the fact that I work 80 hours a week and I hate my boss? No, you cannot. This is a whole journey is a whole journey. And so in my mind, there's never a time for fast food. That's not real food. I call that Franken food. Okay. It's not even made in a lab food, right? Along
Yes.
with the soda, which is just pure syrup. So to me, there has to be a moment where we just say no to all the things because frankly, that's why we're all in this mess in the first place, is because we've all made decisions to take shortcuts and not honor ourselves wholly, in a holistic way. So I'm a little bit more, balance for me is less about, well, I can have this if I do that, and more about how do I balance my heart with my body. It's a different conversation. It's a completely different conversation. But it's baby steps. I get it. I'm 15 years into this journey and there might be someone watching who's like, I don't even know what she's talking about, let alone ready to give up McDonald's, right?
Yes.
One foot in front of the others, friends. One foot in front of the other. And
And if you,
go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, you'll eventually get there.
And if you are that person that's like, I don't even know what she's talking about, maybe it sounds good, go to her website. I'm telling you, she has so much great information. You have so much great information on your website. And
Thank
again, her website is thehealingiswithin.com. Thehealingiswithin.com. So, Dr. Jamie, how can someone safely approach detoxing their body without harming their body?
Yep. That's a good one, right? Because you got all these over the counter cleanses and detox has become all the rage in the last 5 years,
Yes.
right? And we do a ton of detox, but I also teach people that you have to open up all of your detox pathways before you start detoxifying, right? So, what are our detox pathways? Our colon, right? That's a major detoxification pathway. Our liver, our gallbladders, our lymphatic system, even our organs and our tissues have little micro pathways as well. So, the first thing we do in the healing within while we're making lifestyle changes is to open up our detox pathways. I do it on every client. I don't care how sophisticated you are or how long you've been doing the journey. We always open up our detoxification pathways because remember, I truly believe that the only root cause that we're dealing with right now is toxicity. So I'm all about opening emotional pathways, opening mental pathways, opening spiritual pathways. That's the first thing. Once you open up all of those detox pathways, now you can safely remove those toxins from the body. And you use nutrients that not only grab the toxin, but will pull it all the way out through the body and into the colon. That's important. We call those binders. You want something to bind the toxin and pick it up and take it all the way out of the body. And if you do it that way, it's a very safe process. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable because you are going to have what we call detoxification reactions as these things leave the body. But once you go through that process, you realize, and no one actually realizes how sick they are until they're well. I
Ah,
did. It's an oxymoron. I had no idea how unwell I was until I was actually well. And I hear it all the time. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that my brain wasn't working. I didn't realize that my sleep wasn't restorative. I didn't realize that I was a walking zombie because we're so used to not feeling good, Crystal. We're so used to not feeling good that when we finally feel good, we're like, oh my goodness, I could go, do anything at this point. So
yeah.
That's how you do it safely.
Okay. Let's move on to the emotional and mental health side of holistic health. How does the mental and emotional health impact the physical health, which you were touching on a little bit just now from a holistic perspective?
Yeah, so like I said, it's the same thing, right? Mind and body are two sides of the same coin, right? So you're not addressing one without addressing the other. The easiest way to think about it is emotional eating, right? It's just an easy example, right? There are many of us who eat toxic foods from an emotional perspective. It's going to make me feel better. I had a bad day at work. My boss hates me. My kids don't like me, right? Now, all of that's emotional toxicity. Like you're really you're taking. You see, I'm doing this because you're eating it. You're
Mm-hmm.
eating that, right? As you pick up the Big Mac and you're like, I can't stand my job, and you chew that, and
Yeah.
you're not only internalizing the genetic modification, you're internalizing all that anger, all that pain, all that fear. They're not different. They are the same, and they actually heal at the same rate. Okay. Our physical tissues hold on to emotional information. And this is a conversation about frequency. We're not going to get into that today.
Okay, because I was like, huh?
We'll have bring me back. Let's have a whole
Okay.
conversation about frequency and energy. But just trust me, we hold physically in our bodies physical and emotional distress because it's not different than physical distress. So when you are healing and you are detoxifying, you're also detoxifying emotional toxicity and mental toxicity. They come at the same time. I hear, so you'll hear this as well, like, wow, I was I was doing your detox program and suddenly I had all this anger and rage that came up and then it dissipated. Well, we just removed something that was hanging out in your organs and tissues all this whole time. But again, that's another conversation about frequency and energy. Just trust me when I say this, two sides of the same coin.
Two sides of the same coin. What practices do you recommend, Dr. Jamie, for managing stress and improving mental well being?
Yes, I love this question because I get to talk about how there is a war on focus and attention, right? I feel like one of the biggest wars that we are up against right now is for your focus and your attention and your time. Like we talked about, how much time are you looking at YouTube videos? How much time are you on Instagram?
Yes.
These are the issues. And so to pull back and take ownership of your own focus and your attention and where your energetic focus and attention goes is the path to mental well-being. So sometimes that looks like meditation, but the word meditation is triggering for a lot of people because they have this image of the Buddhist monk sitting on the mountain and meditating for 14
Yes.
hours. But even 5 minutes a day of what I just like to say, focus, like focus your imagination on an image or an idea or something you want to create, that is going to have an exponential effect on your mental emotional well-being.
How can holistic health help out with, and we hear it, the words all the time, anxiety, depression, and even in our youth, ADHD. I
Mhm.
mean, I feel like, and again, I'm no doctor, Dr. Jamie, I'm no doctor, but I just feel like with conventional medicine, they just throw pills at this. If your kid comes in, they won't sit down still for 8 or 10 hours. What kid is going to sit still for 8 or 10 hours? Let me just throw that out there. But
Right.
anyways, they okay, take these pills.
Yeah.
I'm sad, I have anxiety, and these are all real. I'm not negating it, but I just feel like they just throw pills at it. So
Yeah.
how can holistic health help with things like that?
Yeah, well, recognizing the root, one of the roots is focus, like teaching focus and adaptable focus, right? So we homeschool our children, so I understand adaptable focus. There's no way you're going to be able to sit for, like, my 7-year-old can't sit for more than 10 minutes at a time. So guess what? At 10 minutes, you get up, you move around, you come back down for another 10-minute slot. So focused, teaching your kids how to focus, which starts with you learning how to focus, right? But also environment. Our school environments use this. This is going to get into a whole topic about light biology and lights and natural lighting versus unnatural lighting. But our schools are full of unnatural lighting. We all know that fluorescent lighting is very problematic. It does not mimic the sun's lighting, which is the kind of lighting that we like and our bodies like and our minds like, right? There's also some understanding about color in buildings and rooms and how that affects a child's ability to focus and pay attention, right? So there are environmental factors. There are physical factors like what are our kids eating? What are they drinking? What are are mom and dad happy? Is the household happy? And then that focus piece. That's how holistic healing looks at it. It looks at the whole scenario. So no, we don't need to throw a child on ADHD medications. We need to open up their detox pathways, detoxify them, understand their family environment, understand their school environment, understand how they tick and how they want to learn, understand what they want to learn. Is anyone asking our children what they want to learn? Are we just going to keep reading and
No.
doing the same books and education that we've had for the last, 500, 600, 700 years? So this is, our children are teaching us that we better start thinking a little bit differently about what it is we're teaching as well. They're bored. The fact is they don't want to hear
Yes.
you drone on about some historical event that may or may not have happened, right? So
Right. Right.
that's a larger conversation, but those are the ways we would deal with it from a root cause perspective.
So far, Dr. James, I need to bring you back for at least 3 more episodes to talk about these larger conversations. But let me just say this really, really quick, and then I'm going to get back to my questions. At the beginning of the podcast, when you were talking about your journey from traditional, conventional medicine to holistic, you
Mhm.
said that you went in as a teenager, 15 or 16, I believe. And the doctor said you had lupus and all of these, watch the sun, take all this medication, and you're not going to be able to have a child. And
Yeah.
then you just said that you have a 7-year-old,
I have two children. And see, that was
two
part of,
children.
yeah, that was early in my journey. So early when I started seeing that doctor and getting off those drugs, I got pregnant. And that really was like, ding, ding, ding. Wait a minute. Didn't they tell me this was going to be a problem?
Yes.
And I have two children of natural childbirth, both extremely healthy. So I actually want to take a moment and tell all my autoimmune females who have been told that, because they're still saying this. They're still saying this in the conventional model. It's not true. It's not true. Everything we just talked about, if you can get your health back in order, you can have healthy, happy babies. Yes, thank you for bringing that back up, because that was huge for me to understand that everything I learned was not true.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Congratulations to you and your beautiful babies. And you just said it so casually. My 7-year-old. I was like, I thought the doctor said she couldn't have babies. And you know what? To tell someone that as a teenager,
Yeah, it's
you
not
know,
okay. It's not
it's
okay.
not okay.
When
And
I
you
look
haven't
at,
even decided if you want to have children or not.
yeah,
And then here the doctor is already taking your choice from you.
yeah, yeah. I don't blame my colleagues or even shame my colleagues. They're overworked trying to work in a system that they know is broken, right? And
Mhm.
so from that perspective, much love. Also,
Right.
it's time for all of us to start thinking a little bit broader about how we care for other humans, right? Because I do remember that time was so demoralizing. It was all very matter of fact. It was all very, here's what you do, here's what you do. Now, there were a couple along the path that were a bit more compassionate and would sit a little bit longer with me because I was a young patient. But the whole journey was really like step A, step B, step. It was very robotic in its nature and very casual in some very large topics like if you have kids, it's, they're going to be sick, or this is like we can't talk to people like that, right? So yes, let's just dispel that one right now. I have a beautiful 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. I had them naturally outside of the hospital, and they're healthy. They came out healthy, and they're still healthy right now.
Yes, yes. Okay. Okay, so now back to my questions. That was amazing, amazing. How can unresolved emotional trauma, and you talked about this earlier, how emotional trauma stays within the body and
Yep.
stays within your cells,
Yep.
how can that manifest physical symptoms that we see and feel and hear?
Yeah, I mean, that's what shows up as, skin rashes and heart disease and, liver problems and lung issues. Again, that's a larger
Mhm.
conversation, but let me just give this little tiny bit. First, I would say
Okay.
anybody who's really interested in this part of the conversation, pick up the book, The Body Keeps the Score, because that is a nice beginner's guide on understanding how emotion and mental is related to physical and how our bodies hold on to those things, right?
Okay.
But we are energy, guys. Okay, what do you think those cells are doing? They're vibrating. What do you think that vibration does? It has a frequency to it. A slower frequency is a lower vibration. A faster frequency is a quicker vibration. Emotions are energy in motion. That's where the word comes from. All of this is an energetic understanding of who we are. And that's why I said at the beginning, holistic health is about understanding and honoring that you are way more than this, you know,
Mhm.
so much more than that. So that's a really global gloss over of how our emotions, our wounds, our traumas, how they end up being physical. It actually changes the cells. It actually changes what the cells do. It actually changes the communication between the cells. And that very much can result in your doctor saying, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes, you have an autoimmune condition, you have a thyroid problem.
What is your thought on supplements and herbal remedies when it comes to holistic health? Is that something that we should be looking into?
Yes, but don't do it alone. Number one, and like I said, that's 10% of the journey, right?
Mhm.
The herbal remedies and the botanicals and the plants, those are beautiful healers. But people go to school for 20 years to understand how those interact in the body, how they can be used together or what we call synergistically, when to use them. The biggest thing you want to understand about healing is it has an organization and a systemization to it. You do
Okay.
certain things at certain times for certain reasons. So I would encourage people to not just go to Whole Foods and pick up, every vitamin D and magnesium and this, that, and the other thing. Again, that's not root cause. That's just putting a band-aid on the symptom, but also to understand how these things work together. And the final piece I'll say about that is just like our food has been manipulated, so that's going to obviously spill over into our supplementation, because our supplementation are plants, right? So a lot of our plants have been manipulated. So we want to make sure we're using the right kinds of nutrients at the right time from the right companies that are doing it correctly. But it's a huge part and a beautiful part of the journey as well.
We are getting ready to wrap up, Dr. Jamie, and I have just a few more questions for you before we say goodbye.
Mhm.
If someone is watching or someone is listening to you right now, what would you say that they should do as far as small, sustainable changes that they can start today?
Oof.
I know the first thing, you talked about earlier in the podcast was having that mental shift, having that
Mhm.
mental shift, wanting to make the change.
Yep.
So we have our audience, we have our listener. They've made the change. They've been listening to you on this podcast. What would you say is the next small step that they need to do in their beginning journey of holistic health?
I would say the first thing you could do that's going to make the largest impact is to manage your sleep. Figure out your
Mhm.
sleep. If you are staying up late at night, you're not sleeping well through the night, you're getting up early, you're sleeping in late, you're not following circadian rhythms, get your sleep in order. If you can get your sleep in order and come up with a really good sleep hygiene program, your mind is going to open up and all the other pieces are going to be accessible to you. The lightest thing that I would say. I'm not going to take away your cake. I'm not going to take away your fast food. Get your sleep in order.
Okay. Okay. And what is your intention in this holistic space, Dr. Jamie? What's your goal here?
Well, I feel like this is my purpose on this planet. I feel like I was blessed, honestly, with a disease early. I don't even see it as a curse. I think I was blessed with it early so that I could go through the process, understand what it is to be a patient, understand what it is to feel trapped in your body, and to find that path out. And so, my goal is to educate people on how their bodies truly work and empower them with the knowledge and the wisdom to heal themselves. And I'm going to keep doing that until I have my last breath.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm so glad that you took an hour out of your day to help us and help my audience live a healthier, holistic lifestyle, at least for the people who
Yep.
want to live that lifestyle. You've given so much great, tangible information that people can walk away from and start using today. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate you having me, and I love this conversation.
Excellent. Now, my last question for you, Dr. Jamie. Who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
So, my colleague, so there are many of us waking up to this, right? There are many of us with MD and PhD and ND behind our name that are getting this. So, I think my colleague, Dr. Mohammed, he does stem cell research and stem cell medicine with his clients. I think he would be a great extension to this conversation and give people, again, a tangible medicine to start working with so that they can heal themselves.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Jamie, for joining us on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Crystal.
And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and learning. You can get Dr. Jamie's podcast on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, along with all of my other episodes. And always remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.